So yesterday we have seen before triggers. In the before triggers, we have seen before insert and before update. We have seen what are the context variables that are available and how we can add a validation rule and how we can update the fields without doing additional DML. Now let's continue with the next one in the delete. So in the before triggers, we have one more event is a delete. So before we are deleting a record, um, so all can hear me. So I want to confirm.
Yes, Balu.
Okay. So in the before delete a trigger event. So what about the context variables? So what actually happened when we are trying to delete a record? There is no changes. There are no changes to the record. Only thing was we are deleting the record. So there would be no new things will be there. So only we'll be having is a whatever the existing data that is old ones. So trigger at old and trigger at old map will be there. There will be no trigger at new context variable. Why? Because in the delete we are not making any change. We are only deleting the record. Anyway, let's check quickly. But we having one trigger on the account, right? On that account. We'll write this context variable and see which are all available. So here I want to add one more event called before delete. So I'm going to write scenario called before delete. So what is the context variable that will tell us whether it's a before delete or not? Trigger dot is delete. If it is true, then this will be known that so the event is a before delete event. Before delete is started. And let's see what about the this context variables in the before delete. So here, let me try to delete some of the records. So I don't have any logic at in my before delete, but just I was trying to print all this context variables. So and see what all the values are available in the before delete. So I was trying to do a delete operation. And yes, I want to confirm delete. So it's before release started and triggered out new is null, triggered out new map is null, and I have only triggered out old and old map. Let's say um, whether I can add a validation rules or not. Sorry, whether I can add a error message to it or not. I guess we cannot add. Anyway, we can check. So we don't have a trigger dot new available. So I was going to use a trigger dot old. And in this scenario, I want to check if you want to delete and if we have annual revenue. Just I was making some value, that's it, nothing else. So if I have some annual revenue value, I will not allow to add it. I mean, I will not allow to delete it. So what I do was acc dot annual revenue not equal to null and acc dot annual revenue is greater than 0. In those scenarios, I want to add you cannot delete account. I cannot delete the account. Okay. Okay. So now I will try to delete it. I cannot delete the account with annual revenue is not 0. So we're getting a error message like this. Okay, so you can add a validations over here and you can stop deleting a record from a before delete triggers. So what are all available? All right here. Have only trigger dot old and trigger dot old map are available and before delete. So like before update. So okay, variable so we have trigger dot new and trigger dot map. Okay, that is all mostly on the before triggers. Let's move on to the after triggers. First of all, we understand in after triggers what are all the contexts we will be having when record is save. So it's a after triggers will fire when record is saved to database. We have record IDs available, and we can see the new changes in the SQL query and make changes to SQL results that all trigger context variable or read-only values. This is in short. Thing was, sorry, what actually we having in the trigger.new and the trigger.old. They are context variables. So trigger.old will be having the older version of the record data, and trigger.new will be having the new version of the data. So you make the changes, what are the changes that will be there in the trigger.new. Wherein before triggers, you have an option to make changes to the trigger.new. But whereas in the after triggers, we cannot make changes to the trigger.new values. Why? Because the data already saved to the database. What are the changes we do it's not allowed, or which will not going to be reflect in your after triggers. So still, if you want to make some changes in after triggers, what you can do is you can use those IDs and again query on the object, but because already it's saved to the database. So when you do a query, you can see all the latest changes in the query results, and then on those results you can make the changes, and again you have to do a update. Then only you can save those changes. Okay, let's start with the before insert. Now tell me, in after triggers, if you are having a insert, after insert, what about all this context variables, and what is this condition in trigger.new? What is the value? Can someone tell me what actually trigger.new will be having? Whether it's having a data or not, first thing. And then what it's editable or read only.
Yeah, it's editable.
It's not editable. That's what it is applied for all the variables. It is a read only. Why? Because it's already saved to the database. So even though if you make change, it will not. It's of no use. So in the trigger new also, we cannot make any changes. It's a read only, and it is having the new values of the record saved. So when you do an insert, this is the first time you're creating a records, right? In the first time you're creating a records, so you're having what all the values you give. So you're having those values, and because it is a after trigger, so you will be having the ID, and you cannot make any changes to the trigger.new because it's a after trigger. I guess here, and ID, record ID also available. Record ID also available. and old map. So old map means for this record, do we have any older version? We don't have any older version before insert. This is the first time you're creating a record. It is saved, but before saving, there is no record exist for the same one. So old maps are going to be a null values, but trigger at new and trigger at new map. Now its record is created, right? So you will be having a value in the new map, sorry, trigger at new map as well. Why? Because the record ID is generated. The new map will be having with the ID and the record value pair. So here, key is the value is the record. And here, um, yeah. Let's write a after trigger and see any questions you having. So I don't want to club both the triggers. So just I want to create one more trigger on account saying account after trigger, so that we'll be having okay. Now here I want to have a after insert trigger. That after insert, just I want to keep a debugs and say all the context variable. So whatever given introduction, whether it's true or not, according to our. So after insert, we are saying what about the all context variable values. Now, if you see when you do a insert operations, so what happened to the both the triggers? So I have on the insert, I have one trigger called a before trigger and one trigger called a after trigger. There are two events of the insert. One is before record is getting saved and after record is getting saved. So we have put the values in the before insert trigger. What the values, if you remember, in the before insert trigger, we'll be having only one value called a trigger dot new. Sorry, this before in sorry about this one. Only will be having a trigger dot new. New map is not available in the before insert. Correct? Why? Because the record is not saved yet. So you will be having only trigger at new values. The trigger at new context variable only present in the before insert. And remaining all are null values. Let's see in the after trigger. We're saying that there are two context variables, triggered new and new map will be having the data and old map will not have any data. So let's insert, let's create an account and see. So I have an account and I'm trying to save it. So let's make it value. So one new record is created. Let's open and see the debug log. So if you observe here, even though I have a two triggers, true triggers will be called when I save the record. First one called is a before insert, and where we have all the null values and we have only triggered a new context variable is available where id value is null. Can you see my screen? Only id value is a null. Whereas if you look at the after insert, so we have triggered new where id is created and new map where id we have and the value we have the record value. Can all see it? And do you have any questions over here? Okay. Now let's understand in the after triggers when we really need the record IDs are required to run your logic. In those scenarios, we'll go for a after triggers. And if based on that ID only, you having your logic written. That means you having parent and child records. Let's say when you created a some record and you want to create a child records to it. Let's say whenever account is created, I want to create a contact, at least one contact to that account with the same name as a account name. So if we want to create a child record, so we need the ID of the parent, right? If you use a before triggers where you will not be getting a idea of the record while inserting. So you have to go for a after trigger to create any child records to the parent because only ID will be created in the after insert triggers. Still, you can add the add error in after triggers as well. Mm, but again, it's kind of a rollback will be happen. Let's see. There are two things. Add error is one, and next one is um, create contact record to the new account is created. Okay. Now I was trying to do two things in my after insert logic. One is I want to check some validation over here. That is, can someone tell me any validation that you think of? So let's say if I so already have some validation over here. Right? So if an active is account, when both are blank, I was trying to add a validation message. And okay, I will try to keep a website. So let's say have a website as a required field. So in the account, if I have a website is blank, I want to add add website to your account for new creation. So I was adding an error here. So let's say I was trying to create a new account without providing a website. Let's see what will happen. So I'm not providing a website, and let's see. So add website to your account for new creation. Okay, let me add a website over here. So now it's set. So we can add a error messages even in the after triggers. Now I want to create. Can someone tell me how to create a contact record after account is created? Account is 16 and I have figured out mhm, for each account I want to have a contact to be created. So contact contact equal to contact. How to create a contact? First we'll create a variable, and to that variable we'll mention the last name, some last name we have, and then we'll be having a first name, and then we'll be having a email, and then what else we might have? Phone or mobile. Let's say I have a phone. What else I need to link this contact to an account? All I need is an account ID. And account ID should be my ACC ID. Then only that will link to my account. So right now, if you look at, I don't have any contacts related to the new account that is created, but I wanted to be one contact to be created after insertion of a account. Now let's give some value here. The last name of the contact should be the account name of the here. Whatever account name we have, the same name I want to create a contact, and in contact, the first name I want to give something called default contact, and the email I want to use default contact at company.com, and the phone just I was giving some random over here account ID. And next, what I need to do? I need to do a insert this new contact. So there is a flaw in this code. Can someone tell me? First of all, I will check whether I was able to create a contact after creation of a account or not. Okay, let's go and create a new account. Okay, and I have a, and I save. So hashtag become created. Let's check whether I have a contact created or not. See, there's a contact created immediately after creation of my account. Okay, but there is a flaw. That is, we are using this DML operation inside a for loop. Okay, but we should not do like this. Let's say tomorrow you are creating a accounts in bulk. Let's say you're doing a data loader or like any other tool like import wizard to load the accounts in bulk, like hundreds and thousands of accounts you want to insert in single time. In such scenario, what will happen was in this one, in this trigger.new, it will be having a more than one value. That is, if you're inserting 100 accounts at a time using a data loader or import wizard, what will happen was the 100 accounts will be there in the trigger.new. The 100 accounts will loop one after other. For each loop, you will be having this insert. So so all this 100 will be taken into a one transaction, even though they are 100 accounts, but you are inserting in bulk using a import wizard or a data loader. All the 100 accounts will be inserted at a time. So what will happen? So this will be called, this piece of code will be called 100 times, or like how many records you're having in this trigger.new. What we need to do in this scenario was you can keep this logic inside the loop, but you need to bring this insert operation outside the for loop. So let's say if you have, let's say if you're having a 200 accounts, so this insert will happen 200 times, but what is the governor limit of a number of DML operation that can be done for a single transaction is 150. But when we're having more than 150 records, this insert operation is happening more than 150 times, and your transaction will fail and um, no records will be created. No records will be created because of that governor limit exception. So how we can avoid? The best practice to follow is we should avoid SQL queries and DML operations inside of our loops. We should always keep the SQL queries and DML operations outside the for loop only, so that we will not hit the governor limits easily. Okay, now if I put this statement outside the for loop, what will happen? So this variable was declared here inside this for loop. So it will say that the variable is not available. So the error you will be getting. So what I can do? Can someone tell me? If I declare this variable outside of this for loop, if I give it outside of variable, I will be having a variable. But the problem was, let's say if you're having a 10 or 20 records or 200 records over here, what you're doing for each record, you are doing a empty, initializing it so that every data inside it will be erased, and you are providing a first name, last name, email, phone, and account ID. And again, it will be jumping onto the next item in the loop. So at the end, what you will be having